Hello and welcome to the Epic Particle Editor tutorial, and I have a cough, so expect many coughs. So, before we get into the meat of this tutorial, we are going to look up on Ace Mastermind's tutorial, because first thing about getting Particle Editor working is actually getting it working, and this explains it pretty good, and Senpai wanted me to explain that part, even though there's already a tutorial, but he likes videos, so video it is. And so if you read through this, you could do all of this, but I couldn't get that to work, so instead we're going to download Particle Editor with munged assets, and I'm gonna have a link to this page in the description, but this is gonna work better if you can do it. But I just did this. And so you download it here, you get to this. And you're gonna see this, extract it. And when you go in here, there's a very handy installation guide. Very simple and easy to follow. So you just drag these two things, open up your game data LVLPC file, and drag them both in here. I've already did that, as you can see, as munged particle editor. So I've already done that. So just drag them in like this, and then you're good. But I've already done that, so I'm not going to do it again. And that's how you install Particle Editor and getting it working. So now that I'm recording again, that was just like half-second jump for you, but I didn't really know how I wanted to do this tutorial, so I guess I'm just gonna wing it, see how it goes, and re-record if it fails horribly. So we're gonna open up a default vanilla particle effect here, which is the Dark Trooper Jetpack. Let's say you want to edit the Dark Trooper Jetpack. You have all of these emitters on the left-hand column, and they each control a different part of this effect. For example, you can see smoke down here. Just delete this, you won't have smoke anymore, it's gone. Jet exhaust left, that should delete this right here. Or I guess this one, because it's mirrored. And that was jet exhaust left, and ring left will delete the outer circle around the flare. Flare left will delete the flare, and you get a same pattern for this side. So I'm just going to focus on manipulating this little thing right here for this tutorial, and then we're going to try to do some other things. So let's figure out what we're doing. Alright, so jet exhaust left. What are these options? What do you do with it? Jet exhaust right, that's the name. You can change it. Let's call it poop. We now have an editor named, now have a particle named poop. Great joke, very funny, I know, I don't want to look at that. Floof, I'd rather look at floof. Alright, start delay. What does this do? Pretty self-explanatory. Set it to 1.0. It's just a delay on when it starts. That can be useful if you have, in some situations I've used it before, but I'm not going to explain it. Alright, burst delay. This is, so think of the particle as a, here, let's full screen this. Think of the particle as kind of a, it's a thing that shoots out many particles at a very fast speed. So this controls the speed at which those particles shoot out of it. So let's say it shoots twice as fast. We now can see particle count go up, and we can see this get thicker. Let's see, 125. We now have 60, and it's even more thicker and more cooler. Let's say 05. We're now at 120 particles. And let's just, for funsies' sake, see how high this goes. It doesn't go very high, as you can see. And I haven't done enough experimenting with the max particle counts and particle editor to know just how they work. Sometimes, depending on the emitter you choose, you can go up to 200, 1,000. It's kind of random, honestly. And yeah, I don't exactly know what I'm talking about with regards to that. Sure, maybe someone else knows, but honestly, I haven't seen one. I don't know who would know how that works. So let's go. So let's just say we have it back at 005. Variance, pretty self-explanatory as well. It's a randomizer. It adds this value. It adds a random number between 0 and 0.01 to 05. And let's just say it's back at 0 again. Burst count, that's a thingy. So we have, so you're thinking of this as it goes, it's a thing that shoots out multiple particles, or it's a thing that shoots out one particle at a time. That's what it is right now because burst count is set to 1. But if we set this to 2, it now shoots out 2 particles at once. So it's kind of like burst delay with speed, but it works slightly differently. Instead of shooting out 1 particle really, really fast, it shoots out 2 particles really, really fast. So we'll set this back, and you might be wondering, what does max particles minus 1 mean? Well, if you set it to minus 1, then it's never going to go away. So that's for if you have like a rocket trail effect or a effect attached to a grenade, you're going to set it to minus 1 so that those effects don't go away for as long as the grenade is in the game or the rocket is in the game. You want there always to be an effect attached to those. But if you were to set this to, say, 150, then it's not going to go away until 150 particles have been played. And as you can see, the rocket trail just goes away after a certain amount of time. Let's say 1,500. And wow, that was fast. This program's also pretty glitchy, by the way, so I'm not sure if that's actually how long it would take. Because, like, if you open the game while this is running, then it will just kind of freeze. So you don't need to open the game while this is running because it'll just freeze anyways. So I'm just going to set this back to minus 1 so we can see our beautiful rocket trail. And sound name, I've never dealt with sound name because generally you don't need it, but like if you have like a capital ship shield, I'm pretty sure they use it for capital ship shields. You know, the Droideka shield noises, it plays a noise for capital ship shields, I think. And that's a situation you would want a sound name. No register step. I have no idea what that does. Only the first emitter slot is used. Don't this, you can really ignore load distance because this doesn't actually do anything. If you might think it does something, but you would be wrong. Because the way you change a particle's load distance, let's say you have like a particle effect that's a black hole, and it's really big and it's really far away. So you're not gonna want, and you could set this to, you could set the set max load distance to 5 million or 5,000 or whatever you want it to be, and it will still not affect the load distance of your particle effect. Because the way you actually change it is you go into your particle effect. Let's go into Battlefront 2 mod tools. Let's say we're going into an arbitrary data folder and open up an arbitrary effect. Let's say Blaster Sparks. The way you change your, see, we have max load distance 50, min load distance 10. This is your actual load distance. And if you want to increase the way, how far away the particle effect is before it disappears, you just set this to say 500 or something. And then it won't go away until for a very long time. I'm not sure what units this is in, but you'll know when it's too low, because it'll disappear in game when you don't want it to. And what's next on the list? Let's go to color. Color, simple, fun. Enable current color. Unused, don't use that. Directional, don't need that. Maybe you need it. I've never used it for anything. It's probably not important. You can do a hue saturation value on here. It's just a harder way of doing red, green, blue. And let's say you want this to be blue. Well, first we'll set blue to 255. And as you can see, it's fairly blue already, but let's say you want it to be way more blue. We'll just set the red to 0 and the green to 0. Very blue. But I think it looks better with the green at, say, 150. So we'll do that. And what does this alpha do? It just makes it, this controls how see-through your particle is. So if you set this to 10, it's pretty much invisible. Set it to 100, it's that. Set it to 255, that's maximum. And let's go to stages. This is unused, as it says, don't use that. Size 0.1, this just controls the size of the particle. Easy. In rotation, let's see what this does. I've never had a use for this because you can't really see it do anything. Yeah, you can mess with this all you want, it won't do anything. I don't know what that setting is for because I can't figure out what it does. Lifetime. We will skip out lifetime on this particle effect, and we'll demonstrate lifetime later. So we're gonna talk about geometry. You know, we're just gonna skip out on transformer for now and talk about that in a couple minutes. Let's focus on geometry. So what is geometry? What are these settings here? Let's talk about the texture. The texture, you can open up any arbitrary texture and see how it affects the particle. Let's go to, if you go to data, common, effects, all of these effects will work with particle editor by default. All these textures will. So let's say laser red. You can't really see how it changed because very well, maybe you noticed it changed a little bit, but it's not very well because we set our colors to blue. Let's say explosion. There we go. This is a texture. Not entirely sure why it looks green, but well, that's what these do. They change the texture of the particle. Space dust, what do you look like? Just mess with these till you find the right one. Ooh, this looks cool. We'll go with that. And what does additive do? What does normal and additive and blur do? Well, let's just look at it, see what changes. So this has these two things have some color implications. So if we go to color, set everything to 0, you'll get black with normal, but with additive, you get absolutely nothing. So let's set this to 100. Let's set this to 255, 100. There, now we have something again. If we set everything to 255 with additive, you get white. But what happens if it's normal? You should probably still get white. Oh, guess not. Actually, that's probably to do with the color transformers, that you see how it starts white, it goes black. That's because of this right here. So let's see what happens if you set it everything to 255, and we'll explain this later with a better particle effect for explaining it. And yeah, you get white. But what is the real difference between these two? I'm not really sure. It just changes how they look. Kind of neat. Just a kind of neat thing to mess around with. But blur is interesting. Let's say you don't really see it. You can't really set blur in Particle Editor. You have to go into Notepad and mess with it. And so I should probably demonstrate what it looks like in game. And yeah, I'll demonstrate what it looks like in game when you set blur. But first, what do these do? I'm not really sure what these do. Particle is the only one I ever choose because it's the most predictable. And yes, ooh, spark length, that's a good one. In fact, let's mess with that a little bit. Let's open up sides, common, effects, blaster sparks. So here's the thingy. Let's mess with the spark length. Let's set this very high. Cool, right? Frame height, frame rate, number of frames, I never mess with these. So I'm not gonna. Actually, let's see what it looks like. So you can't really tell what's happening, can you? Yeah, I don't know what the difference is. Could be something to do with that particle count issue we were talking about before, but I really don't know. I'm not an expert, I just know some things. And so let's go back to the way it was before, when the spark length was decent. So what else do we have here? Max particles, we're at 99 now. Set it to 50, we have half the amount of sparks. Let's set it to 10. You should have really few sparks. And what else is there to talk about with these? Nothing. We'll go on to a new particle effect and see what's next. Something I forgot to mention before was positioning. So we're gonna look at positioning these trails here. So let's say you want to move this off a little bit to whatever direction. So let's say we just move this, make it 6. X controls this vertical coordinate. It's very confusing what these coordinates are in particle editors because you don't expect X to be vertical. Y is probably... So Y controls this axis. Y controls this axis. So it should be... It should move, yeah, downwards when you increase the negative Y. So this will look more downwards in the game. And Z should control the horizontal coordinate. And yes, it does. And let's see what these types do. Inherited velocity, I don't know what that does. Let's see what it does. It doesn't seem like it's doing anything, so who knows? None. So these types do certain things, as you'll be able to see demonstrated. Types vortex, this is like used for explosions maybe. Circle is a very good type. I use that for things. Like if you want a particle effect going in a specific direction, then circle is pretty good. Rotator, also something you might use for explosions. Vortex and rotator are similar. We'll set this back to spread, that's kind of the default. In velocity, that just changes the speed your particle goes. And setting this negative will make it go backwards. Position, this, who knows what that does. I'm not really sure what the intention with that is. I guess it's makes it thicker. You don't really need this. Using this isn't really the best way to do anything with this position thing because it's kind of unpredictable. In spread, I just ignore these because it's kind of confusing too. So, and that is positioning. Alright, so we're gonna talk about transformers now, and oof, I don't know why it just full screened itself. But we're gonna open up orbital attack, this orbital attack beacon effect I made. As you can see, I tried to do max LODs distances before I knew how it actually worked in this game. Don't use this. Go into Notepad with bounding radius, like we did before. So we're going to talk about transformers. And transformers are probably the most confusing part about particle effects. You know, it looks kind of low res in particle editor, but it doesn't really look that way in game, like if we zoom in. So first, we're going to talk about what does this do. Lifespan is the time that it takes before an individual particle will disappear. So let's set this to 3. It now disappears after 3 units of time, whatever those units are. So I'm going to set this to 4. And let's see how this affects things. None will just make it stop. Or maybe it won't. I'm not really sure how these work. But I've tried to change these before, and it's let me down. So I don't mess with those anymore. Like I tried to mess with the scale, change the scale here, and it'll do some useful things, but it didn't actually work in game, so I recommend you don't do that here. Oof. Alright. We'll mess with scale elsewhere. So, color. So as you can see, we have this disappearing going on. It looks choppy and bad. And we can fix it. And we'll do that with... There's two methods to fix it. We can use color and we can use size. So if you want to do color, we'll just... You have two stages, stage 0 and stage 1. You can just add and remove stages. If you remove stage, remove it from the highest number or else it'll crash. So we'll set stage 0 to none, and as you can see, change some things. And lifetime, and it doesn't matter what we put here. It doesn't matter what we put for these values because the type is none. Except for lifetime. As you can see, our emitter lifetime is 4. And so, and hey look, we already got rid of the choppiness, but... So we have the lifetime at 3 right now. We go to stage 1, and this gets added to our lifetime of 3. So after 3 units of time, we're at this stage of color. So it's only gonna last 4 units of time, so I'm just gonna set this to 1. And that shouldn't have changed anything, but it sort of did. No, it just reset the animation. And as we can see, this is exactly what we wanted it to do. It's already nice and smooth just by default, but if we had this at like, let's say we can change these colors. We'll try changing it to blue. Let's say this wasn't at negative 170 alpha. We'd have this chaos going on. So in order to make it smooth and natural, we set the alpha to 0. And what else we can do? Or we set it to negative 170. But that makes it look kind of short, so we just mess with this until it looks nice. Negative 10. We still have disappearing going on. This just messes with the opacity, so I'm just messing with that. Usually setting it to 0 will be fine. In fact, we're just going to set it to 0 and set this to 2. And yeah, we're just going to go back to negative 50. And alright, we have a nice smooth animation. Oh yeah, reach is what we normally do. There we go, reach is what you want. Huzzah, we did it. Okay, but now let's say you want this halfway red and halfway blue. So we'll go to stage 0. Leave it the color it's at, stage 1. We'll change this to 255 blue. And it's halfway red and halfway blue because we have stage 0, the color starts as red because red is in the spawner. And it goes for 2 units of time, and then it sets stage 1 where it's blue. And we'll talk about rotation next. I don't know how rotation works. There's another tutorial that explains how rotation works, but I never use it, so I don't know how to use it. So we're going to talk about size next. Let's say let's say you didn't want it to fade naturally through colors. Let's say you wanted the color alpha to be 255 or whatever. We could still make this less choppy through editing the size transformer. So we'll do basically the same thing we did for color, and we have two states. We only have one currently, so we'll add a second one. In stage 0, we are not going to do anything. Well, we're going to have to do something. We're just going to leave it the way it is right now. Try and mess with it, say 2. Oh, craps. It's kind of difficult to predict how this thing works. There, I think this is what we wanted. And then we'll go to 1, and we're going to have our scale set to 0. After a certain lifetime, let's say our lifetime on here is 4. Let's say this lasts for 2 seconds. I'm not even sure if these are seconds. And then this lasts for 2 seconds. And there, it's smooth again. And I think it was thicker before, so we'll set the scale back to 3. I think it was actually originally at 4. And there we have a nice little, kind of looks like a bonfire maybe. But yeah, it's smooth is the important thing. And you might wonder why, if you open a particle effect and you want the lifetime to last longer, you might wonder why this, setting it to 8, doesn't do anything. It's probably because you have something like the size making it disappear or the color making it disappear. But yeah, we'll set this to 2. It still works fine. We just edit it so that it disappears after 4. And I hope that makes sense. This is the most confusing part about Particle Editor, but that's how you work it. So now we are going to talk about blur. And so we're just going to demonstrate what blur looks like in the game first. And we have Furries vs. Villains mod open. And so we're just going to demonstrate this. And it looks like this. That's what a blur effect looks like. It's obviously, it makes it blurred out. I believe Jigglypuff also uses it in a ground smash. Don't know if you saw it, it goes really fast, but that's what the blur looks like. And if you open it up in Particle, this is the same effect that that the cat person used, and of course it doesn't work because we had the game opened. See, not responding. And it just better, we'll just open up another one. And we still have the game running in the background. So we have nothing here. Open up our blurring effect, and you can see there's nothing here. But in the way you fix that is you go into Geometry, unselect blur, go to normal. Or you can go to additive 2. It doesn't really matter. And we also have the second emitter that uses blur. And this is what the particle effect looked like that we just demonstrated on the cat person. And so the way you actually get this to work in game is that if you go back to blur, it doesn't do anything. So if you want to actually have a blur effect in the game, you open up a particle effect that already has blur. I'm not sure which ones in the game by default use blur because I don't remember. So I'm just going to show you the code that you have to put in Notepad. So we're going to go open up our FBV mod, sides, imp effects, and it's called Nico Push. And Notepad, and if you scroll, we have two emitters, shockwave and smoke. And the way you implement blur is, here we'll save this actually, just save it like this. No, we're not going to save it like this. But this is the code for implementing blur in geometry. Notice you have this section for geometry in Particle Editor, you also have it in Notepad. So you just replace whatever your geometry is and have these values. And you'll notice how you have it. You'll notice the spacing is different than it is up here. You notice that this geometry is closer to the left-hand column than this one is. And that's just because as the further down you go, the more bracketed it goes. So make sure your bracket is aligned with the bracket above it. Make sure your brackets are aligned with the brackets above it. And this is, you'll need to copy all of this. So you'll have this, it goes like this. You can delete this. And that's what your notepad should look like if you want to have blur. And we'll show you what it looks like in game without blur. It looks, well, you can already see in game what it looks like without blur. It looks like this. But yeah, just in case, we'll go back in the game. You can appreciate how very different this looks than what you see in Particle Editor. And as you can see, it's frozen again. and that's all you need to know about blur, really. Alright, so that's basically all the basics of Particle Editor. I'm going to demonstrate all these functions in use if you want to keep watching. And if you do, or if you don't, there's something special at the end of the video that might help you. That doesn't have anything to do with Particle Editor, but is really useful for particle effects. So we're just going to demonstrate stuff now. And we're going to go into, first off, we're going to open Particle Editor again. And we're going to go from something that looks like something very basic to something very complicated. Let's say, what's my favorite thing to start with? It is Comwep Rocket Trail. This is my favorite effect in the game because it's really easy and nice to work with. And we're going to edit this and make it look like something more impressive, like effects. We're going to go into Fisto Bubble Effect. And oof, that's not exactly what I wanted. Here, we're gonna, so this, you'll get this if you have custom textures, and that's why it looks like this, because the game doesn't really process custom textures very well. Well, it does, you can make it, but I didn't. It'll still look fine in game if it doesn't look fine in Particle Editor, is what I'm saying. So we're just gonna, oh crap, I'm just gonna stop recording. And we're gonna go from this to something that looks like this. And yeah, we're just gonna close it because that's how confident we are. So what do we do first? Well, in our example, we didn't have a flare or smoke. So we just have this little, nice little glowing ball. Let's say we duplicate the emitter. Spark emitter, let's go we have we have this nice little pulsating thing, and that's due to this random positioning we have here. It looks real great. I recommend you do this on your particle effects. Just have these values if you want it to be pulsating. And we're going to change our geometry. And let's go to Common Effects. We'll go to Flash Ring 1. And I'm actually going to make it so that it's not randomized here. Make it non-pulsating by setting all these to 0. And we'll get rid of this to make it less confusing. And we still have a little bit of pulsation. We can get rid of that in probably transformer size. And we still have, or maybe transformer color. We'll remove this color state. But this isn't horrible. We can work with this. So let's change the color from red or whatever it is, and we'll set it to 100 blues, say 255 blues, and we'll set this color to none. The nice blue we have here is an additive. I'm going to set this to normal because I like normal better, and we'll just change the color a little bit more. 100, let's say 200. And we still have these rings. We don't like these rings. Let's get rid of them. Okay, after some experimenting, we figured out what the problem for this was. Variance. It's this variance in the spawner stages size column. This should be 0. And there, it's not pulsing anymore. Congratulations, we did it. And you know, let's do some theming. This was originally supposed to be Kit Fisto's bubble. This is my personal Kit Fisto bubble effect. Let's make it something else now. We'll call it an ice effect. How about that? We'll make it ice. So what is something that we have that looks like ice? Dirt looks like ice. And we have it to be dirt. So let's make this look like ice. How do we do that? Let's we have it at normal right now, so we'll set all these things to 255 and it will look white. So we go to geometry. Let's try additive. Yeah, this looks more ice-like. So and we'll just, and we removed this earlier, but we'll add it back in. And we'll change the Y position to this is cool looking. Let's go with that. And what we're going to do next is just emitter duplicate. Now we have 2 of those going on. And we will, this is the big version, so as you can see we have a big thing and small things coming off of it. So this one's going to be a small thing. So I'm just going to call it small. Because I'm being careless with titles. And I never really title things anyways because I'm lazy. Even though it's for my benefit. And what we're going to do is we're going to change velocity. What does this do? It puts us going in a direction. Why did I add a decimal point there? Or rather, it should put us going in a direction. It's just being dumb. Alright, since it's being stubborn, we're going to delete this, go to emitter, or add emitter, we're going to do the same thing we did before, and we're going to go to ComWeb Rocket Trail Effects, and oh look, it's nice and bright. Delete the things that we don't want, which is that and that. And we're just going to change this geometry to dirt. And we're going to color it. Spawner, color it white. 255, 255. Geometry, normal. No additive. Additive looks better. Get rid of the colors, stages on here again. Select none. And there. Now we will... This one's still the top one, which we can change the velocity of. If we can find where the velocity setting... If we can remember where the velocity setting was. Let's say it's 10. And it's going up right now. And I believe we can change the direction. So we're going to change the direction by messing with these spread values. We have type circle. We'll just set this to 10, see what happens. Oh good. It does exactly what we wanted. And we already have... We're good, off to a pretty good start now, so let's just make this fancy. Let's make this look as cool as it can be. So let's go set this to, say, 005. And it's looking cooler already. And why is it like this? Well, we'll set it so that it's going... It covers the entire radius of this circle. So let's mess with these positions. Let's try going higher and lower. That looks pretty good. Let's try that. Let's try these at 2. And we're getting something that looks closer to this. These speeds are too high though. So let's go to stages. No. Where is velocity? 5. I want you at 5. We want you at, let's say we want you at 3. And we obviously need to make it last longer than that, so let's say this is at 1. And oh no, we're at a max particle limit. That's unfortunate. We'll say there. And this max particle limit, who knows how it actually works. But I just know that Particle Editor won't let you go over a certain amount. It might be that Notepad lets you go higher. But the first thing that we're going to do is edit these sizes. We have these sizes, we have varying sizes in this thing, so why not do it on this one? Let's say this variant in size is 0.2. And we do want it to not look like this. So let's make it last longer. We can work around this particle limit. So we can look at these spark emitter values that we have set on here. And we have burst delay 05, variance 25, burst 1. So we'll just try reducing these burst delay values on here a lot, so that we don't have to deal with this max particle count quite so much. And oof, that was the wrong Whoopsies. There, this is the one. There, this looks nicer, right? We'll set this to 2.0. And it has a decent length to it now. And we have varying sizes. We'll just, for added randomization, vary this burst count, or burst delay, 0.0025. And this is basically what we have for this already, except we have these ones that go slower. All you have to do is just recreate this one, and then reduce the velocity, and then you'll get these slower ones over here. But I'm not going to do that for this. Instead, we're going to see this right here, how they all disappear. That's not smooth. We're going to go to Transformer, Color. We're going to add a state. And it's very important that stage 0 is set to none. And since our emitter lifetime is 0.2, we're just going to set this one to 0.1. Or something to give it time to transition to... We're giving the color time to transition by doing that. And we're going to set this one to reach. Set the color to 0. And we're going to have this one set to 0.1. And just set all of these to 0 because it's white. We'll try it at -50, -100. And oh boy, it's doing nothing. And it's because I'm editing the wrong one. I'm an idiot. Oh, I'm going to remove this. Go back to the one we were supposed to do because I didn't name it properly. Trail. There, name it. Name it Trail. Okay, now we're going to redo it. And oh my gosh, did I just rename this to Trail too? Alright, we have 2 stages. This one is set, the first one is set to none. The second one, we have it, we're giving it room to transition. And we're setting alpha to 0. And the color to 0 because we want it to be white. This should be 0. There, set the color to 4. Just work our way up. Lifetime 1. What was it before? It was way back here. So we're trying to get back as far back there as possible. Oh yeah, the emitter lifetime is 2. I don't know why I was trying to set it so low before. 1.5. Egg. And now it's not responding. Oh, it somehow set itself to... How did this get set to none? That's so weird. Okay. Let's try this again. 1.5. There. That's what we were supposed to have. See how it's faded out. And hooray, we just applied everything. Pretty much. We can also set the size transformer. We've already demonstrated how to do that. And great. That's how you recreate this thing. I am so sorry that this tutorial was such a mess. But I think we can agree that Particle Editor itself is kind of a mess. And now that you've made it this far, it's time for your reward. So there is a little bit of code that I always put in my Lua scripts. So scripts Coruscant, we'll just try this. So let's say you're using a lot of particle effects in your mod, and you notice that they start disappearing. What you could do is in your memory pools is you add this code right here, and what this does for you is it gives, or you don't need soldier animation, this is what you need for particle effects, but if you add this code to your map, your particle effects will never disappear. You might notice in your game that that particle effects will start disappearing later in the level if you're using a lot of particle effects in your mod. But with this, that won't happen. I'm not really sure what exactly this does, what it's doing to your game. If you are worried about runtime errors, or if you're doing PS2 modding or something, then I recommend you don't do this because it does use memory. But generally, it's pretty helpful. I find it pretty helpful. And that's all. Thanks for watching this total mess. And goodbye.